So the bivalve, the mussel, the clam, they are slow-moving animals, and so they and other mollusks that are slow-moving are easy targets to get pried open and digested from the inside out. Underneath the pyloric ceca, you will find the reproductive organs, the gonads. Underneath each of the pyloric ceca, which you can see over here in this image on the right, it's labeled as hepatic cecum, but that's the pyloric ceca. Underneath that, you see the kind of lighter colored jelly-looking substance in there. That is the gonads, and they also run down each arm. You can see them in this picture in pink on the left, and then green on the right is the pyloric ceca, so gonads in pink, pyloric ceca green. In the males, those will produce sperm cells, and females, they will produce eggs. Fertilization is external, so both of them release their sex cells into the water, and when they join together and become a larva, they go through indirect development. And this is a picture of a larva of a sea star, and probably the most striking thing about it is that it is bilateral. Over time, as this larva develops, it will form into that typical pentaradial 5-armed structure, but when it starts out, it's got a right and a left side. So this embryological and larval development links the evolutionary relationship of this group more closely with the vertebrates that we're going to be studying in future units. So even though this is an invertebrate, it's grouped here before we get into the vertebrates because of its development as a juvenile organism. Sea stars can reproduce sexually with sperm and egg. They can also reproduce asexually through regeneration, as long as part of the central disc is included. So the disc, again, is that central portion. If some part of that is connected to either half when the sea star is pulled apart, it will be able to regenerate. They also can lose body parts as self-defense. That is called autotomy. Anytime you see an organism like a lizard sometimes will drop its tail if it's attacked, that is autotomy. And again, not all lizards can regenerate when they do that. It's not a good idea to go and try to find a lizard and make it drop its tail. Sometimes that causes them to have problems for the rest of their life because they don't regenerate. Sea stars are lucky because they can lose an arm as defense and regrow it. Their skeletal system, as invertebrates, they do not have a backbone, so they do have an endoskeleton. It is made up of those calcium carbonate plates, and they're called ossicles. And the ossicles are connected to the spines that stick out through the surface of the body. They offer protection, make them less appealing targets for predators. The ambulacral ridge that contains the radial canal that water runs through or gets pushed through to the tube feet also contains the radial nerve. So they don't have a brain. There's no head end on this organism, so anatomically it's a little harder to describe where things are found on it. But it has a series of nerves that run along its water vascular system and help it respond. They have an open circulatory system. There's no heart, there's no blood vessels. They are filled with this fluid called hemolymph, which is found inside of the coelom, because these are coelomate organisms. And the hemolymph allows them to move the nutrients from their food that come from the pyloric ceca to redistribute it around the inside of their body cavity. It both protects and cushions the inside of the body and redistributes oxygen and food particles. There's no head, there's no brain, there is no cephalization. So they have a nerve ring, again, that goes around where the ring canal is in the central part of the disc, and that connects to radial nerves that run along the radial canals in each arm, and that allows them to coordinate the movement of the sea star. So you can kind of get an idea of what's going on with the sea star wasting syndrome. If it is causing a break in the connection of the nerves, they can't coordinate their movement. So the arms aren't all trying to move in the same direction, and if they go in different directions, because of autotomy, their ability to pull themselves apart as a defense mechanism, they can actually pull themselves apart trying to go in different directions. Their body can sense temperature, can sense chemicals in the water, it can respond to touch. They have eye spots or ocelli, so not an eye, but a very primitive, light-sensitive spot at the ends of each of the arms. That allows them to know if they're moving into light or dark. They're integumentary. That's their skin, spiny skin. They have skin gills, hollow tubes that are on the aboral surface that exchange gases with water and help excrete nitrogenous waste. So in addition to doing some of that through their tube feet, they can do that through skin gills. They have spines that protect them. Those spines are connected to the ossicles below. And they have these little pinchers, or pedicularia, that keep their surface free of organisms. So instead of having little things growing on the spines on the surface, these little pincers that look like the claws of a lobster, but little tiny ones, will actually scrape the spines clean. In some species, those can be venomous, so they'll actually pinch things that move in too close and can inject venom. All right, brittle stars. So another group that we're looking at, the brittle stars, Ophiuridae, are similar to sea stars. They're pentaradial, but how do you tell them apart? Okay, well, one of the big things is the madreporite. The madreporite is located here on the aboral surface of a sea star. In a brittle star, it's located on the oral surface. So they still have a madreporite, still kind of looks like a little wart structure, but it is located on the mouth side. Starfish have a deep groove that runs around the oral surface of their arms. Brittle stars do not have that. They have flat plates or vertebrae that not really like our vertebrae, but sometimes described with the same name, that cover up the bottom of their arms. So a little bit different. It almost looks like the internal structures that we see in a sea star with no covering and no grooves. The arms and disc of a starfish tend to blend in together. If you go trace a line around the arm, when you hit the end of one arm, you're at the beginning of the next arm, and so on. But if you look at a brittle star, the arms are completely distinct from the disc. It's really obvious to see where the disc is, and the arms are kind of attached to that central portion. So here is kind of a general review of some of the members of this group. Sea stars, sand dollars. This is just the sand dollar that's been dried out in the sun and bleached. Brittle star, and these guys tend to be a little bit smaller. You can hold one of those in your hand probably. This is a sea lily, a sea urchin, sea cucumbers, and this is a crown of thorns, a very pretty sea star with many arms. And we're going to wrap things up with a shot of this sea star that would make Sir Mix-a-Lot happy. Hope you've enjoyed this presentation on echinoderms.